Welcome in, Big Ten backers. We are now the Buckeye backers, if you haven't noticed already. So here we go. What's up, Vegas? He's back in town. We got to discuss Northwestern, the game at Wrigley Field. But before we do, let's get into this intro, baby. Here we go. Buckeyes all the way, baby.
Proud of our young people, and most especially in 310 days in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
I know Prince's going to throw for it. Got to get it off. They go for the ball game. Touchdown! Touchdown! Michael Jenkins on 4th and 1. Holy Buckeye! Under pressure, throws it. Incomplete. The Buckeyes win.
It's so easy to be average. The hell with that. We don't want to coach average. Did you push yourself to be great today? Did you do it? If you didn't do it, you lost today.
Bill Jones gets the snap, takes a run, drops back the pass, fires long. Down the right side, going toward the end zone, and it is caught. Touchdown. And it's Devin Smith again. Samuel cuts it back. Ohio State wins.
Pitches to Archer Griffin, number 45, and Griffin fighting up the sideline, and he gets it into Michigan territory. A great individual effort. Throws it 20-yard line. Eddie Jordan finds the hole.
Smith in trouble, spins away from it. 40, 45, 50, 35. Roy Smith.
To throw. Steps up. Delivers deep down the field. He's got a receiver. Olave. Touchdown Buckeyes.
In a spot in the national championship game. It's on the way. No good. He hooked it. And Georgia is going to survive.
I haven't scored a touchdown in a long time, so it felt good. Give all the credit on the word of God. And when I'm coming around the edge, I see JT punch it out. I said it downstairs. There's no chance in hell I was diving on that ball. I was trying to scoop and score it no matter what.
Howard runs it. First down, Moore slides down inside the 40. Ohio State.
So to be continued. There's more to write on this season, but Northwestern's the next one up. We got to write about them. So let Northwestern join the show, baby. What do you think about Northwestern? First impressions?
Is it Indiana week yet?
Let's move on right along. Let's get to that top 5 matchup. No, I mean, they're a notch better than Purdue, right? So we should expect maybe Northwestern to get a score or two, and Ohio State maybe not to score 45 points. But other than that, it should be, a 30-something to 7 type of game.
I would agree, and that's kind of what you're seeing. We'll get to the Vegas lines later, but that's kind of what you're seeing with the spread there is maybe a little bit tighter than last week with the 45-0. Maybe 35, 38, somewhere along that range. But I really don't think we're going to see much competition here in terms of just talent on the field. It's going to have to be a myriad of factors that would play into this game being close.
Absolutely. Northwestern is a terrible team. They're not good. Ohio State needs to crush them, and they need to crush them quickly, especially with this stadium setup, which we have to get into later. But Northwestern, their defense, the 100th rated passing defense in the nation, to give up 241.1 yards per game. So we should be passing all over this team. We need to get the ball out quick. We need to do the short crossing routes, medium range games. I don't want to see a lot of balls going deep, especially into these corners of these end zones, as you'll see in some of these pictures, man. It's atrocious the way this is set up. What do you feel about playing in Wrigley?
This is an absolute joke across the spectrum. First and foremost, you want to play bowl games in baseball stadiums. I'm fine with that. Fenway's got one. New Yankee stadiums have one. If Wrigley wants one, I'm fine with bowl games. I think that's the fun and pageantry of bowl season. And if Northwestern does want to play at Wrigley in the regular season, this is a perfect Northwestern Purdue type game. where you need to get eyeballs on it. You want a little spectacle. You want fun. Ohio State absolutely should not be playing at Wrigley Field. Shame on the AD, whoever decided at that time. I'm not sure if it was Gene Smith or Bjork who agreed to this. Should never have agreed to play at Wrigley Field. I understand Northwestern is going through a reconstructive period the next few years with their stadium. I completely get that. You and I were talking earlier today. There was 5, 6, 7 better options. College stadiums, other stadiums, all different kinds of options you could play at. The number one most important thing about this week is the field and getting out of healthy. It has nothing to do with anything else about the score or anything. This is, please do not let this field mess us up this year.
Absolutely. We got to protect our assets, and our assets are those players. And look at where these seats are. If you can see in this picture, if you're not watching this live, we have just kind of pointed out the seats in the end zones, and on both sides, the end zones are atrocious. These seats, they have corners jutting out and maybe 5-10 yards at the most from the out of bounds line, that white mark on the edge of the end zone. It looks like just danger waiting to happen. I mean, this is not the type of field that Ohio State plays a game on. If you want to play Purdue on this stadium, you can, but you don't put Ohio State in a stadium like this. They're too big for it.
Absolutely. But I mean, one phone call from an AD and that decision doesn't happen. So shame on Ohio State for agreeing to play here. And you and I were joking earlier in the week. I don't know when exactly that game was, but there were a few years they played at Wrigley Stadium. They only had one end zone. And now they magically made 2. But I think that emphasizes the point here of when you're looking at the you see the one section, it's kind of going towards your third base line, right? You have a little bit of room outside the end zone, but not much. But I'll tell you right now, the other end zone is going right into a brick wall. That's not an exaggeration. It's Wrigley Field. There's no ivy there. Even the ivy doesn't help you a ton, but there's no ivy in November. It is bone dry, and it is a brick wall. This is absolute insanity that Ohio State is playing at Wrigley Field.
We talked about it. We even looked it up. You know, they could go play at Northern Illinois if they wanted to. If they want to try to hold some capacity, you can get about 30,000 people at Northern Illinois. I'm sure that they could get some more stadium seats brought in order to accommodate some Ohio State fans. But they obviously couldn't play at that lacrosse stadium on the lake, which is beautiful and awesome for a makeshift stadium. For some reason, I think Soldier Field got turned down. The Bears or someone couldn't accommodate, so they said no. But you got to find another place to play. I get it, man. This is historical. I really wanted to be there. Wrigley Field would be nice to catch a game at, just to see the Buckeyes there, because maybe never will happen again in our lifetime. So, or maybe never at all, because this isn't really a great setup for a football game. And depending on how it turns out, do you think it's going to change how they play the game?
Yes, absolutely. If I was coaching Ohio State in this game, I'm basically looking to get out to an early lead. And I'll be honest with you, even if it's 21-0, I'd probably be taking my players out. And this is all contingent upon, I'm sure, pregame, right? You're going to get out there. You're going to see that field. But I don't like makeshift fields. I mean, this was a baseball stadium a month ago, really. I'd probably say 6 weeks. I'm trying to look at the calendar, do some quick math. But you're talking end of September. The Cubs are still playing baseball, albeit not playoff baseball. So you're talking 6 weeks ago, this was a baseball stadium. So I really just don't like those makeshift fields. You try to say that you wouldn't change your game plan or your game, but honestly,
you have to.
Yeah, to your point, are you running a fade into the center field, or I should say right field? No, I'm not.
No,
I'd be very.
And you think about it, you know, that back shoulder end zone throw. Watch out. Because you don't want your wide receivers, especially the Maurice Clarett of wide receivers, the modern-day Maurice Clarett. You do not want Jeremiah Smith over towards those seats getting injured before a playoff run. And especially before number 5, Indiana, the Hoosiers, come into town. You need to have your best players ready for their A game next week.
I completely agree. And that's why I cannot believe Ohio State agreed to this. You're looking at baseball stadium. I don't know Wrigley's numbers right off the top, but you're somewhere always in the range of 30 to 40,000, pretty much any stadiums like that. This is an older stadium, so I'd probably lean towards 30. It's 30,000 seats. So what? Ohio State spring game doubles, triples that some years. So I don't even care if your makeshift stadium for 2 years is 15,000 seats. I have no interest in trying to accommodate a few thousand extra tickets. It's not 15,000 to 100,000. It's not that extreme. So this is a case where I would have went to that other place. I would have said, I don't care who's in the stands. As far as Ohio State goes, if this one's 31-10 or something like that, get off the field, get your second string in there, no injuries, just move on to Indiana. That's really the goal here.
How laughable is that that's what we're talking about? I mean, we have Northwestern. They're scoring 19.2 points per game. Well, these Silver Bullets are only giving up 10.7 points per game. That's second in the nation for that Silver Bullets defense. We've given them a little bit of crap for the pressures that they're not exerting on some of these offenses. But, man, that defense is elite. They should be holding Northwestern to 1-2 scores at the most.
I agree. But, in college football, again, we talked about this last week, getting a shutout is incredibly rare.
Absolutely.
Even if you're playing an FCS team, it's incredibly rare because we've seen that that fourth quarter touchdown. A team gets a good drive together and they put a field goal up. I mean, these things happen. So the fact that they pitched a shutout last week was fantastic. I really doubt that they're going to do it this week, albeit I think that they could against a very pedestrian Northwestern team. But you're right. It's funny how last week we were talking about stat builder type games and all these players that can get on the action. And this week, I think you and I both agree the number one concern here is health and safety, field conditions, and just getting out of here with a 14, 21-point win. Move on.
Absolutely. So this is what I would do. I mean, you want this game to be get some scores quick, get some scores often. What you can't have would be an absolute nightmare is make this game extended with your starters and have them have to win. So pull out all the bags of tricks and turnovers. We cannot have any turnovers this game. We got to keep the ball under control and in our arms and not in the defense's arms as far as Northwestern's concerned. We got to keep the ball. We got to limit turnovers, and we got to take the lead quick. What I think you do in this case is you keep your offense open inside like the 40s, right? 20 to 40-yard lines on each side. Then you got to constrict it to more of a running game. That's why it's nice to have Will Howard, that he can just run it up the middle anytime he wants, and to have that stable of running backs, which we have. I think you're going to feed the running game in the red zone because you don't want to take a chance at injuries within this game. I know you got to play to win. You have to play to win. But hopefully they can get ahead early and just run the ball when they get inside the 20. Those red zones got to be running game. What do you think?
Completely agree. I think this has to be a run-heavy game. There is no reason to really be airing this ball out or doing deep fades or running all this stuff. I don't think there's a lot of talent on this Northwestern team. And this is one of those games where I go to my offensive line and I say, you control this game. If we run the ball 45, 50 times in this game, so be it. You're going to control this game for us. And we talked about it 2 years ago, right? That game in Northwestern. It was 40, 50 mile an hour winds. It was bad. They took away the throwing game, and the running game never clicked. And it was 14-0 at one point, and it ended up being 21-7 final. Just a sloppy, ugly game. But that's what, if I'm Ryan Day, I show that film and I basically say, we can't have this week. It's not a weather game. We checked. Wind gusts are modest. It won't be bad. It's not going to rain. But I'd show that game and I'd say, offensive line, you control this game. I want 250, 300 yards on the ground.
You know what's ironic about that? Northwestern is 100th in the country at passing yards given up a game. Guess what they are in rushing yards? 16th. They only give up 108 yards rushing per game.
Yeah.
So it kind of throws that strategy out the window a little bit. They might have to, do short range passes. Just keep those crossing routes going. The problem is those crossing routes can get you towards the out of bounds real quick on those sides that jut out there too.
I don't care what your rushing defense is because you played Maryland and Purdue and Washington.
Yeah.
I'm running.
What are their wins? Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, like, I'm running the football. If we look back on this game and we say, my goodness, every time they handed off the ball, they were getting 2 yards, 2.5 yards. We have a much deeper problem. And that's what is this offensive line doing? And why aren't we getting 5-6 yards a pop? And this is a kind of game we can talk like this because, to be honest, you and I aren't going to be having these conversations after this week. Every opponent we're going to face is going to be tough, staunch defense. It's going to be different mindset, different games.
Well, and you're going to have room to complete passes in the end zone.
This is a joke, man. This is an absolute joke that they're playing at Wrigley Field. Take your history, your prestige, the fancy or the iconic stadium, and throw it out the window, man. Dude,
I love that though. I love that they're playing at Wrigley Field, and I hate it at the same time. Like, I get that. I get the history of being in Wrigley Field. It has an allure. It's a place that I'd love to go watch a football game. It's just, I don't, Buckeyes have a chance at a championship season, and I don't want to see it ruined by this design, this field design, this layout is just, I can't get over it. That's why I made this little graphic with the fingers pointing this out, because this is just laughable that they're playing in a stadium like this.
Yeah, you know when it's a great stadium? Middle of June, when the Cubs are playing the Cardinals. That's when it's a great stadium. Well,
let's get on to some of those Vegas stats. You're Vegas for a reason, so give it to us.
Yeah, I am. And again, I think that's what you're really seeing with all the lines and everything. And as always, before we get into the betting segment, we always want to point out to the Buckeyes backers, want to let you know that any aspects of our betting segment is for entertainment purposes only. So if you have a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER and please gamble responsibly. But you're seeing that with a lot of the odds and the fact that the line started at 30.5. You've seen that dip to 28.5. I probably wouldn't see this dip any further. And I say that because right now you're seeing about 75% of the cash going to Northwestern. They're going to keep gobbling up that hook. And then you're probably going to see that line drops to 28. You'll see a lot of stoppage. Because to me, if I told you on Sunday morning, Ohio State wins 35-7, would you be surprised by that score?
Not at all. No.
Neither would I. It would be a very common type score. And at 28, you push. So I see the 28 being pretty heavy. Once you see it at the 28, you'll probably see a lot of the betting stops. So that's an interesting spread there. Over-unders dropped to 43.5. And again, I just pointed out a 35-7 game. We all really see that happening. That's 42 points. So you really got to ask yourselves, do you see Ohio State taking the foot off the gas when it's 21-0, 28-0, and kind of just a very sluggish, dull second half of each team gets a touchdown? What are you kind of thinking when you're thinking of score, these spreads? They're kind of unique.
I think you're right on. So the best case scenario for me would be to go with under. What are you taking?
As people have known for years, I typically do stay away from Ohio State because I believe you bet with your head, not your heart. However, what I do like is 97% of the cash over the last 36 hours is trending towards that under. So I would actually be going the under in this game because I just don't see Ohio State putting up a ton of points. Like last week, we talked about how they dominated every aspect of that game. It was 45-0. If they take the foot off the gas, one touchdown early, it makes a break stat. Even here, I don't think they're going to pitch a shutout, but 35, 38 points, you give up a field goal, you're hitting that under. I really would go under here. How about you?
That's what I said. I'm going under for sure. And the reason because of the stadium, I think they have to take that into consideration when they offensive game plan this.
I agree. And it's, we were talking about this earlier too. I was saying, okay, show me some of these stats, right? Who are their studs? Every team usually has these players that kind of pop out when you're looking at the stats and everything. Nothing popped out to me whatsoever. Everybody just looks incredibly pedestrian. Even on the defensive side of the ball, typically you see a good linebacker or something at Northwestern, pretty pedestrian across the board. This looks like an incredibly average football team. Their record shows that. What they've done this year shows that. So I don't know. I would be really shocked if this one isn't just put away early, but I also could see a world where Ohio State just completely takes the foot off the gas in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, we've already discussed this ad nauseum. It's just one of those things where you don't want anyone to get injured. And man, this stadium, I love it and hate it. Like I said, I love it and I hate it at the same time. So anything else we want to get into as far as prop bets or anything?
Yeah, definitely. And that's where I'd probably be leaning this week, to be honest, just because, again, these spreads and over-unders, they just really seem like Vegas has this one pegged. And Vegas is really good at that, right? That's why the strip is what the strip is. So I would be very cognizant of the spread or the over-under. However, we are digging deeper into the prop bets, and I think there's some interesting ones. First one that kind of caught my eye, Will Howard rushing touchdown. So be very clear there when you're betting. Make sure you're looking at rushing touchdowns versus overall touchdowns. Just him getting one rushing touchdown is plus 120. I do like one. You've talked about it quite a bit. Yeah, I like it quite a bit, especially inside the 20. You know, I was knocking him last week over missing reads. I do want to reiterate, I love the running quarterback in college football. I think it is an absolute weapon. I think it keeps drives alive. I love Will Howard running the ball. And also a case, you know, second and goal at the 2 or 1, he could be sneaking it in. So that's one of those props I like at plus 120. One I do want to kind of pick your brain on is last week his over-under passing yards was set at 279.5. He went 260, so he hit the under. This week, you're seeing the under at 249.5, which is the favorite at minus 110. How are you feeling about his under there?
I would venture to go over.
Really?
Because of that 100th ranked passing defense. Yeah. I think he's going to get a lot of yards through the air. The only place they're going to slow down is going to be close to the end zones.
Yeah, but he threw 260 last week against a really bad team too. So
it was a really bad team, but their worst part of their defense, I think they were 122nd in rushing defense. So I'm going with the over on the passing.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
I like that.
He's going to get us 250.
And then the next two we're kind of comboing, and we called this out last week, and I think that, you know, you kind of ride this train a little bit to see what hits is Carnell Tate. I don't know about you, but it's becoming apparent to me the last few weeks he is earning reps. He is earning throws, and he's catching them, and he's executing. He is looking like a tremendous number 3 wide receiver, and you're going to absolutely need that as you get into these playoff runs because you're going to face a lot of good cornerbacks. And I know Smith is always open. Ibuka runs the best routes of any wide receiver. However, having that third option in Tate, so a couple things to look at. You see the receptions at 2.5 receptions. I love the over there. To me, getting 3 receptions at Tate seems pretty realistic to me. That's at minus 150, though, heavy favorite. And then Carnell Tate for a touchdown, plus 130. How are you feeling about the running the Tate train there?
Let me think about that. Plus 130, touchdown?
Yeah, just one touchdown, plus 130. And then over 2.5 receptions is minus 150.
I would take the over 2.5 receptions, but probably I'm staying away from the touchdown because I don't know. I don't know if they're going to throw much to the end zone.
Yeah, you don't have to. I mean, he runs that crossing route at the 13 and finds his way in.
It is a homecoming for Tate, so maybe that changes things and they try to get him the ball in the end zone. And it's going to be an emotional one. Carnell Tate's mother was killed in a drive-by shooting in 2023. So he's coming back, and man, Ryan Day talked about how inspiring he's playing and you know how he's dealing with all these emotions. And I'm sure it's got to be tough on the kid, man. How old is he? Like 20, 21, 22?
I don't know.
Man, that's got to be – I can't imagine what he's going through, you know, the emotional highs and lows of this. And hopefully football and his team are kind of help him. I know Gee Scott Jr., he lost his mom a few years ago, so maybe he's helpful as a teammate there and as the brotherhood is strong and taking care of the man, you know.
Absolutely. There's not much you can say when you lose your mother, especially the senseless violence like that. So that's just horrible story. Your heart goes out to the young man. He seems like an excellent human being. So, yeah, it's going to be an emotional game. And, those are a little bit tricky. When it's a really emotional game, you try to do too much. You hope you keep those emotions in check. You make the plays you want to play, and he's going to represent his family fantastic. He's just a wonderful person. So I really, really pulling for the kid, especially in a game like this. So
for sure. Yeah, it would be like kind of one of those heartfelt moments that, those classics that you only see on TV if he can get that end zone touchdown. Yeah. So, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm going to give it to him. I'm going to give him the touchdown, man. Pulled at my heartstrings a little bit.
I'll tell you what, I wanted him to get a touchdown before I heard that story, just simply because you're seeing the targets going to tape. You're seeing him execute. He's earning those targets. So I thought, Will Howard throws that ball 6 yards deeper. He hits Tate in stride. There's a touchdown last week. So that's why I was playing that. But now you pulling this emotional story, and let's all pull for this young man, betting or not, man. That's just a good. You want him to have a good ending to that story. So
absolutely,
yeah. And then the other one, the one that's kind of caught my eye, Ibuka with receiving yards. So I'm seeing his receiving yards at 59.5, and the over slight favorite at minus 125. I know he only had one reception last week, but I really see him maybe getting a little bit more volume in the first half. What's your thoughts on that?
I absolutely could see it happen, just because, like I said, the 100th ranked passing defense, they're going to be passing the ball, and they're going to plan to pass it a lot. Man, Emeka Ibuka, it's been hard. It's been hard to judge what he's going to do, because he could have a breakout game at any moment. He's got the talent to do it. Something's happening where he's just not getting the ball quite as much. I know Jeremiah Smith has obviously been targeted a lot, but Emeka Ibuka, he's the senior. He could have 3 touchdowns on any game, and he could, pull in 200 yards receiving. Just hasn't happened quite as much as we'd like it to this year. So I would stay away from that, to be honest with you. I hope he gets it. He's a few hundred yards away from being the all-time leading receiver in Buckeye history.
How far is he?
It's crazy. I think he's somewhere around 300 yards out.
Okay.
303 is what I was reading earlier. He has 2,444 yards in his career. He needs to have 2,898 to top Michael Jenkins.
I think they'd like to give it to him, man. And I wonder,
that means 100 yards. 100 yards the last 3 games, right?
Yeah, potentially. I don't know. I don't know if postseason numbers count or not. I'm not sure. But if they don't, you're right. And that's a case where 100-yard games are really difficult to do.
That's really true. Yeah. Yeah. Marvin Harrison Jr. can do it.
Oh, Ibuka can too. I mean,
I know.
Let's not forget. Again, as a diehard Cleveland Browns fan, I live in the world of mock drafts because it's all I have to live for this year, being 2-7. Ibuka is a consensus top 20 pick in just about every mock draft I find, going to different places, right? But he is a legitimate first-round wide receiver, one of the most polished route runners you're ever going to find, catches everything in his sight, sneaky good speed. So, I mean, I think we're just forgetting with the immense talent of Jeremiah Smith that you have a legitimate top 20 wide receiver on your team just kind of lying in the weeds. Most teams for that is their number one. So
they die to have him. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think everyone's been sleeping a little bit on Ibuka. What I love is the fact that I really think you're going to start to see him ramp up. And I think as some of these good teams maybe shade that safety over on Smith or whatnot, I think he's going to start having a field day.
I would love it. I would love to see it, man. No one deserves it more. Emeka Ibuka has been there from the beginning. I think he had that good relationship with Stroud when he was throwing to him. And then McCord last year was getting on the ball a little bit more too. So maybe just that relationship and that, whatever kind of camaraderie that they get with a quarterback and throwing the ball to him. It's just one of those things that he didn't develop with Will Howard quite as nicely as he did with some other quarterbacks.
I mean, how cool would that be I don't know where the Texans are going to pick, right? Let's just say mid-20s.
Oh,
How cool would
yeah.
it be if Ibuka fell to like 25 and the Texans
would be
picked him up and
sweet.
he's back with Stroud? It would just be cool to see that connection all over again. So, because they got
Absolutely.
Nico Collins there, we'll put the Michigan boy aside and let Ibuka shine. That'd be really cool in the NFL. But
All right.
yeah, it's a couple more player props I want to look at. I know where you're coming from a stat perspective. To me, I look at this game and I see it again as being a pretty run-heavy type game, or I'm hoping to be a pretty run-heavy type game. So you got Quinshan's over-under rushing yards at 69.5. That's plus 103 to favorite. And you got Travion Henderson just rushing. Want to be clear, not total yards, just rushing over 59.5. I'd love to see them each hit these overs here. Looking at 75 yards a piece, let's say, give or take. I don't think that's anything extreme. You pointed out really well on Sunday that Travion Henderson, he's getting skinny through the holes. Every time he touches the ball, it looks like he's ready to break off a 60-yard run. It's incredible. And I just think Quinshan's going to have the number of carries to be able to do that. Kind of what's your feeling on the over-under on just rushing yards there?
Yeah, I have a feeling Travion is going to hit that one this game. He's going to break through. He's going to get one rush over 60 yards. So I'm going to go over for Travion Henderson. And Quinshan Junkins, man, this is tough because now we're looking at, if I'm going over with Howard and passing yards with 250, then I got over 60 yards. Yeah, we're pushing 400 yards of total offense, which is something that Ohio State's certainly capable of. So I'll go over with Quinshan Junkins too.
I think these are pretty modest rushing numbers, right? You're not
Absolutely
seeing 90 or anything like that. That's a little tough to do unless you break one off in college football just because of so many weapons and resources. I don't think Will Howard's going to hit that 249.5 in passing yards. Not disrespect to Will Howard. I just see him having a 225 game, distribute the ball, get a few touchdowns, hand the ball off quite a bit. So certainly possible. And then the final two props we're looking at more team ones or game ones. The next one is Northwestern scoring total points in the game. Remember last week, Purdue was at 7.5. I thought that number was really nice because you could survive a garbage touchdown. Not the same this week with Northwestern. The over-under set at 6.5 with the over, the heavy favorite at minus 160. I think they're saying to you, they want you to take this because that garbage touchdown in the fourth quarter lets you hit. So
yeah, I got to go over. I think that they're going to get a touchdown. Like you said, it's hard to get a shutout any game in college football. So 2 weeks in a row is going to be tough. Northwestern's got a little bit that they can distribute to. So I'm going to get them one touchdown. They go over. Yeah.
And then the one I like is the first half total points. So this is just the first half. What are the two teams scoring? It's set at 23.5. The over is a slight favorite here at minus 125. And what I like about this is a 21-3 score at halftime. That's not an outrageous score. That's not a blowout. You don't need a lot of things to go right there for that to be a very realistic halftime score. And that's 24 points. It hits that over. To me, I think that first half total seems kind of low to me. So I'd be looking over there. How about you?
Yeah, I think a lot of the points will come in the first half too. So I'm going to go with it over.
Yeah.
Man, I'm over all day today.
I know. And that's a trend a lot in betting, right? You see everybody not just in games, but overs with a lot of stuff. I don't know.
So I went over for the first half, but under for the total.
And that's fine. Again, well, again, 21-3 at halftime. Very realistic score. Let's say the final score is 35-6. Right? Again, another realistic score. A couple touchdowns for the Buckeyes and a field goal from Northwestern. You've hit the under in the game. So you hit the first half over and hit the under for the game. All of those numbers are very practical here. So
for sure.
And I think that's kind of surmises what we're looking at. I don't want to call this a sloppy game, but I feel like it's maybe going to be a little tight, a little controlled. I mean,
controlled is a good word for it. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's funny because you're kind of when you're looking at these overs, you're talking a lot of overs, but then to your point, when you start sticking them all together, you're talking 400 yards of offense. Is that going to be 35 points? Is that going to be 42 points? I'm not really sure.
Absolutely.
But
well, hey, we need to pay some bills. So Dano's is gonna get hot and spicy here real quick. Dano's coming your way. Get you some.
Dano Seasoning, food's favorite flavor.
Yum, yum, get you some.
I'm Joe Burrito, your favorite burrito. Whoa, whoa.
Joe, we
Hey.
all know you're the best.
What?
You can always do better.
What you got?
Try the new Dano's Hot Chipotle.
Hey. Ooh, that's spicy. Yum, yum.
Yum, yum, get you some.
Yum, yum, get you some. All right. We got to move along and get around the shoe. So this segment's just get a little bit of things going on in Ohio State. So first of all, we talked about Tate. He's coming into town back where his mother was killed in 2023. So hoping everything's going well with him and that it's not too much of an emotional roller coaster. Second of all, there are rumblings that Quinshan Junkins is going to stay for another year. Thoughts on that, man?
this is the second time today you've told me that, and I still don't believe you. It makes absolutely no sense to me. Obviously, as a diehard Ohio State fan, alumni, I would absolutely love to see him back. We love Quinshan. If he wants to come back another year, great. To me, I'm a business person, and when I look at this, I would say this is an absolutely terrible business decision. However, we'll take you back with open arms.
Oh, I'd love to have him back. I mean,
yeah.
if it was me, I could see myself doing it only because, you know, born and bred, this Buckeye is in my DNA. You know, almost my entire family went to Ohio State. I was there very briefly and then transferred back to where I played small college ball at. But I could see myself doing it. I don't know if I see Quinshan Junkins doing it. Only, I mean, if there's he just is intrigued by the brotherhood. He's getting plenty of money to stay, equal to what he would be getting if he signed. The problem is, you know, you're one injury away from not making those multi-million dollars, that generational wealth. More props to him. If he stays, awesome, dude. We're going to be all ecstatic by it. But once he sees those numbers coming in, maybe that'll intrigue him to leave. Because he's definitely going to submit, right? He's going to see what the NFL is going to give him.
Yeah, and that's where I was looking at contracts, right? Because I would say right now you're seeing Quinshan projected maybe second, third round, right? You're not seeing a lot of first-round running backs anymore in the NFL. I know Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs went a couple years back in the first round, but that's incredibly rare. That second round is pretty common. Depending on where you go in the second round, you're looking at anywhere between I'd say under 10 million and 6.3 million. Now, granted, that's a 4-year contract, right? So that's not per year. That's a 4-year contract you're looking at. So not a ton of money. You start slipping into the third round, you're looking anywhere between 5 and 6 million. So, you know, it's not a ton of money. I can't imagine what he would make. You know, in NIL, you're probably talking 1 to 2 million a year. So the money may be a little bit comparable, but I often ask myself, like, what's your ultimate goal when you come to Ohio State? And winning is certainly it, but you're winning to get to the NFL. These players, by and large, come to Ohio State to go play in the NFL, unless you're just going there because you're a third stringer and you love it and you've made your dream come true. But you came to Ohio State. I think he came to Ohio State to kind of take some of the workload off him, to be honest with you, which I thought was a really smart move. But now you're at a point where I really don't see you improving your draft stock all that much, because even if he has a breakout year next year, it's still unlikely to see a team use a first-round draft pick on a running back. You're probably still at the high 2. Maybe you sneak into the first round. I just don't see you moving your draft stock all that much. So to me, he's coming back either, I don't know. I can't tell you the reason.
Yeah. And maybe that was behind closed doors, just saying, yeah, I want to split carries because I've been the bell cow. Maybe he just really wants to be the bell cow. There was something weird that happened at Ole Miss to get him to leave. I don't know what it was, but there was some type of falling out. There had to have been. Unless, like, I don't even think Ohio State went after him. I think it was just like one of those things. He entered the portal and they were like, you know, we'll test the waters. And then Obviously, they asked Travion Henderson. At least that's what Ryan Day said. They asked Travion Henderson, "Yo, are you going to be okay with this if we bring this guy in?" And he was like, "Yeah. Is it going to help the team? Is it going to make us win? All right, let's do it." So maybe now he's like, "All right, I've seen what Buckeye Nation's all about. I've seen those 100,000 fans. I want them cheering for me for a whole season now, and I want to take the ball as much as I can."
Maybe. I mean,
if those guys are just like, I want to get an All-American. I want a Buckeye tree out in the Grove.
Maybe. And I can't speak to somebody's motivation. To me, if I had that level of talent and I was a first string running back at Ohio State, my number one goal would be to play in the NFL because I'm in that position, right? You're a first string running back at Ohio State. You have the ability to typically play in the NFL and for a long time. And it's not just solely about the money. It's you play football, you love the game, but you play football to get to the ultimate destination, which is drafted by an NFL team. So I see that. And I also think this is a really smart philosophy by these two running backs because they both have enough tape to get them to be second, third round talent players.
Sure.
They're going to be really talented in the NFL if they stay healthy. So I actually think it's brilliant because what they're saying is, hey, you're bringing in someone else. We now have dual running backs. You're not putting as much, taking all that tread off the tire. I'm okay with 12 carries a game because I have enough tape that shows I'm a third round back. And Quinshan, I think he was just overused at Ole Miss. And I think probably somebody got in his ear and said, hey, if they're going to run you 35 times a game at Ole Miss again this year, you're going to get a lot of wear and tear on that body. Why don't you go play Ohio State? You don't have as many snaps, but everyone's seen what you can do on tape, and they know you're talented. So I don't know what his motivation was to come here. I don't know what his motivation would be to stay. I think he's got the tape to be a really good, talented running back, and the only reason we're talking second round is because NFL teams aren't using a first-round pick on running backs anymore. I think that's the only reason. So
yeah, the NFL game's changed and they don't need to, so why do it? The next thing, and I saw him on the sidelines when I was there for the Purdue game, walking around. Maurice Clarett is a staple around this team. He comes in once a week and also goes to most of the games. Do you think his eyes on this team, his voice to the team, would make a difference with these kids? These kids, think about it, though, before you answer this question. They were not born, probably, when he was making that run, that crazy freshman run through the Big Ten and to the national championship. I mean, those runs against Miami where they couldn't even tackle him. He sneaks through a hole. I mean, those plays that he made where he ripped the ball about. Yeah, ripping the interception
out of perennial Pro Bowler's arms. I mean, just unreal plays. I don't know. I would have to say I don't know, and it's hard for me because I never watched him. I can always relate to being a Cleveland Browns fan. Everyone tells me how Jim Brown was the greatest running back of all time. And I've seen like 3 or 4 of the same clips my entire life of him, but I never saw it. I never know. Same with like Joe Montana and Dan Marino. I was really too young.
Saw Clarett play.
I know, but that's the point I'm trying to make here.
Yeah, for them.
I never got to watch Jim Brown just be a dominant NFL player. And we got to see Clarett. They did not. To your point, that was 2002. Most of these kids weren't even born yet.
Crazy to think, man.
I know. It's insane. It's really dating us pretty big time here. However, what I would say is the story of the cautionary tale. I think that could resonate because what he could say is, I've been in your shoes. I was here. I was an elite talent. I mean, he got drafted in the 3rd round, right? Basically after his freshman year. Sophomore year, I can't remember exactly. I know there was all that rule scuffle and all that.
No, he had to be 3 years removed from graduation.
Which is still the rule today. But and he didn't play. Did he play after his freshman year?
No, he never did. No. He tried to declare and then
2 years of sitting, and he got drafted in the 3rd round by the Broncos.
No, are you kidding? If he would have played the second year, we would have had another national title, man. That was what we were missing.
I know.
He was the game changer, dude. Could tackle that beast of a man.
The moral of all of this is the cautionary tale. And that's where I think if somebody's done my line of work in the past and they come to me and say, hey, Matt, I did your job 20 years ago. Here's what not to do. I'm going to listen. I may not know who you are, but I'm going to listen. So I do think that
does 22-year-old Matt listen?
22-year-old Matt didn't really listen a lot. Yeah.
Because 22-year-old Steve didn't listen either. I would not have listened. I would have done the same thing that Maurice Clarett did, only it probably would have been worse.
I don't know how it gets a whole
If I was in his shoes, it would have got worse. Yeah.
But that's what I love about the Ohio State locker room, and I hope this is in place, and you've seen this in place at places like Georgia and Bama as well. That's a job. At Ohio State, this is a job. You are going there to get your next career, which is ultimately the NFL. So if you go in that locker room and you treat this like business, then you're going to treat everything like that, and you're going to have a maturity level that a lot of us didn't have at that age because we know what our first job is going to be. They're treating this like a business, like an internship, so to speak, because they know what their next job could be. So,
and I'm thinking, give me one game running the ball like Maurice Clarett at the shoe. I'm just out of my mind doing stupid shit. It's all partying from there on, man. I mean, maybe not. I don't know, but that's just the way I see it back in those days.
Yeah, and I think maybe it was a little bit more back when we were in college, right? You heard some rumors, you saw some things, you seem like it's a little bit more. Again, I'm not on that college campus all that often. You're just not hearing those stories of the last 10 years the way you and I did in college. And I think it's because it's transitioning more to business, right? Where I'm sure these NIL deals, I don't know them exactly. I'm sure they have some kind of clauses and stuff in there, morality clauses, things of that nature, where you lose your money.
Yeah. Speaking of business, let's get to these big noon kickoffs, man. It has been all over the place. I mean, anywhere you look in college football, everyone's talking about it. Buckeye fans are pissed. Penn State fans are pissed. They lost their whiteout, man, always against Ohio State. Everyone was looking forward to it. That atmosphere was insane in Happy Valley every time Ohio State came to town. They don't get that anymore. Ohio State has had 27 big noon kickoffs. The next team closest has had 11. I think it was 11 for Michigan and 9 or 10 for Penn State. It's insane. I mean, they're just capitalizing on Ohio State. And I don't even think that what they're saying is even true. They're saying it's the most televised Big Ten game. I think they had 9.94 million viewers per average. But guess what? How many did Oregon and Ohio State have? 10.2. 10.2. And that was a primetime game, so it had more. And then all these SEC games, when they're in primetime, they're getting more viewers.
So whose fault is it?
Would Penn State and Ohio State have more viewers if they were in primetime?
Maybe.
Yeah, and I think they would.
I mean, I don't remember what game was that week on ABC, but, if it's Georgia, Texas, who knows? Who knows if they have more or less? And that's what you're butting up against.
Well, I think it's also helping those games, though, too, because you're getting the Big Ten's biggest game not going against the SEC. So you're giving everyone that time that they want to watch at night, and the SEC goes unobstructed. So it might backfire a little bit.
It could. I mean, whose fault is this ultimately?
But I'm still pissed, man. It's ruining environments. That's my biggest thing. It is ruining college football environments because the shoe is crazy. And it is crazy at night. But it hasn't been crazy for a long time because we don't get to see it. I don't even know if people will know how to react when they get a night game at the shoe. They might just stand there like they do at noon games and, no big deal.
Yeah, kids these days, they don't know how to be loud and obnoxious, man. I mean, I hate to be an old fuddy-duddy, but let's go back 25 years ago. Every game was a noon kickoff. Every game was. I mean, and those stadiums were loud. They were intense. They were tough environments to play at by and large.
But these days, it's lights, it's noise, and that's what it brings, man. All those, glow with your phone, turn your light on your phone to the music, and you have all those lights blinking. Some of those atmospheres that you see on Twitter or on any social media, any clips that you see on the game, it's nice to see, and that's what young people want to see. It's what recruits want to see. It's the players there's some, back and forth whether the players prefer to play and get it over with or wait all day. Beside the point, it's for the fans too. The fans got to want to buy tickets, and noon games are just not that fun for me.
I mean, if you don't like the $61 million a year you're getting, you can give it back. I mean, this is the trade-off, right? You're one of the highest paid conferences in the country in terms of your media deal and what they pay out to each of the 18 schools, so to speak. And this is that trade-off. You got away from ESPN, who owns the night market. NBC's kind of second, but they're always going to be little brother there. And you went to Fox, who is smart in saying, why am I going to compete for eyeballs at nighttime when I can have maximum eyeballs at noon, 9 a.m. out here? And then you got CBS, who has always dominated that 3:30 time slot with the SEC. So you have Fox at noon, CBS at 3:30, you got ABC at night. It's that classic example. When the Big Ten went away from ESPN, this was the ramification of that. And my counter to all this will be, when it's a big game, i.e. not regular season, you're going to be playing at night. Big Ten championship game, night game. All your playoff games are going to be night games. You're going to get your night. You're going to get your prime time. You're going to get all of that. So get to the
you're not getting that recruiting base to come in at night to Ohio Stadium. That's the difference.
I mean, to me, if I'm a recruit and my number one reason for going there is a bunch of cell phone flashes on.
No, but you're going to want to see what an awesome environment is.
You're not going to get it.
That might not be your number one thing, but yeah, you're going to want to see something awesome. You're going to want to see a great environment, but you just don't get to see that at Ohio State anymore.
Again, this is the bed you made, man. It's the bed you made. Well, then you know what? The Big Ten commissioners need to go to Fox and say, "Hey, start flexing out a little bit," or start using your muscle.
At least share the wealth a little bit. That's the only thing I got to say. Some teams aren't playing at noon, others are.
Because if I represent Fox Sports, I'm the CEO of Fox Sports. I'm going to take Ohio State every single chance I can get because I know it's going to maximize eyeballs and maximize commercial and maximize revenue. And as long as I don't have any quotas or restrictions, why would I change? I have no reason to change. So this is business. It's straight business. And if Ohio State doesn't like it or they feel like it's hurting their recruiting base, you're going to go back to the Big Ten commissioner and say, renegotiate this. Or we want a cap per year on how many games we have at noon. And you're always going to have Michigan at noon, which I'm fine with. Maybe that's your one big noon game.
And that would be great.
It's the Big Ten's fault. They signed this media deal. Everyone knew well ahead of time what slots all those channels had, and they played right into it. So I don't know. Do you really believe that playing at noon is going to hurt recruiting at Ohio State?
Possibly it could. I mean, if I'm a recruit, I want to see a cool environment. It could sway me another way. That's for sure. If I go down to Alabama and I see an awesome environment, maybe I'm trying to decide between the two. It could be the deciding factor.
It
might not be like, yo, this is why I'm going. This is the sole reason I went down there. It was awesome. It blew me away. No, but you're talking play at time. You put it all together. You're going to get the NIL package. You're going to get your playing time. You're going to get your chances on getting to the next level, to the NFL. Then you go environment, fan base, and everything else.
Yeah. But then my counter would be, okay, you need to be loud as hell at noon on Saturday. You need to make that an incredibly cool setup.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, again, I guess I look at any player who should be coming to Ohio State, and I'm saying you're coming to Ohio State because you want to play with an elite program and you want to make it to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you should be coming to Ohio State. If you're coming to Ohio State for an NIL paycheck or because the lights can flicker on and off every time a touchdown gets scored, get the hell out of here. I don't want you. I want you to come here because you want to be elite and you want to make it to the NFL, because that is going to be the difference. Look at these Georgia teams the last few years. All of them, watching the Eagles game right now, half of Georgia's team is playing on defense. You know why? They went to Georgia because they wanted to play in the NFL, not because they flicked the lights on and off. So I'm not a big – again, I'm not a 22-year-old kid or an 18-year-old kid. I get that. Unless I see it affecting recruiting, I don't really care, but I'm an old fuddy-duddy, so what the hell do I know?
Old fuddy, get out of here. Hey, let's talk playoffs, all right? So now we got 4 Big Ten teams in the playoffs. We got number 5, Ohio State would be matched up in the first round against Boise State if everything were to stay current. Number 6, Penn State against Ole Miss. Number 7, Indiana against number 10, Alabama. So all of these Big Ten teams are going to have a first round home game. Then you got Tennessee versus Notre Dame. So who gets the bye? Number 1, Oregon gets a bye. They would play the winner of that Tennessee Notre Dame. Number 4, Miami, the ACC leader currently, would have a bye. And number 3, Brigham Young has the bye for the Big 12. Number 2, Texas has the bye for the SEC. What do you think about that, man?
The one thing...
What do you think about the Big Ten teams? And what do you think about the SEC being all pissed off that too many Big Ten teams are making it and getting the byes, and the fact that they think Indiana doesn't belong, they think Penn State doesn't belong because they haven't played anybody?
I completely agree. And listen, this is something I've knocked the SEC for a decade, is incredibly fluffy, soft schedules. And they have them. Go back and look in the regular season prior to this year, how many times Georgia and Alabama played against each other in the regular season in the last decade? I'll tell you the answer. One time. So they intentionally built these schedules in the SEC forever to make sure Alabama, Georgia really didn't play a whole lot of tough teams. Alabama never traveled out of the South. I mean, going to Wisconsin this year must have felt like they were going to Russia for how far that must have been a trip for them. They never traveled outside the South, and I am including Dallas as part of the South. Georgia traveled a little bit. They did go up to Notre Dame a little bit. Didn't travel a ton. Both had soft FCC schedules because they wanted their 2 teams in. This year, I love what the SEC did. They have tough schedules, tough games. Georgia's schedule is brutal, especially their road schedule.
Oh, my goodness.
Alabama's schedule is brutal. I love what the SEC did. And what's going to happen this year, if you look at what you have up right now, an incredibly weak Indiana schedule. And Penn State.
This is Indiana. I think they're somewhere around triple digits as far as their schedule ranking. I think it was 100.
It was 103 going into Michigan. I don't know what it is after that. But Penn State's is just as bad. And by the way, Penn State,
we'll pull that up for a second.
Against Bowling Green, right? Bowling Green may win the MAC, but that's still nothing to sneeze at. But what you're going to do is if you put 2 high Big Ten teams in who have played absolutely nobody, you're now telling the SEC, hey, stop scheduling tough. Stop putting all these tough matchups together, because what you want to do is build yourself up so you're getting the 5, 6, 7, 8 seeds. So you're getting these home games. I think this is a recipe for disaster.
They've added too many teams to the to both conferences. So what needs to happen? They need to both be scheduling and one schedule 10 conference games. You get rid of a lot of this. Those weak schedules will go away quick if you had 10. You add you'd only add another one to Indiana's schedule, but Indiana did what they could do, and they're doing what they can do. I mean, they're winning 77-3, 31-7 against Florida International. I get it; those aren't big. But then you get into UCLA, 42-13. You get into Maryland, 42-28. Northwestern, 41-24. I mean, they're blowing people out. Nebraska, 56-7. They're doing what they needed to do to establish their will and assert dominance with the schedule that they had. If it's another emblem up there, if you put a Texas Longhorn, if you put a winged helmet, if you put even Nebraska, probably, if you put their logo next to it, they're going to be ranked that high. No one's going to have any questions.
They should have questions.
It's just because it's Indiana. I mean, they'll say stuff, but, we got to give Indiana a chance. They've done what they needed to do. We'll see how they play against Ohio State. And then maybe you adjust stuff later next year. But what do you do? I mean, the SEC teams can't lose 2 to 3 games. Just don't lose 2 games. If you lose 2 games, you have that wiggle room, right? Up to 2 games. And you're still going to make the playoffs, most likely.
But if I give Indiana Georgia's schedule, we're not even talking about them. That's the point I'm trying to make. Is
the problem is we don't know that yet.
We'll see.
We'll see after they play Ohio State.
Yeah, but this is different. You're now 10-0. You've got mojo going. You've got confidence because you've just beat up on 10 crappy teams. I could take their schedule compared to the Big Ten standings, and all you're doing is looking at the bottom of the standings. And I'm not even exaggerating. Maryland's at the bottom. Northwestern's at the bottom. Washington's at the bottom. Michigan State's at the bottom. Michigan's at the bottom. These are all bottom-feeding teams. UCLA's been on a 3-game win streak, or else they'd be down there. Florida International, a terrible team. And I get it. And Indiana's not going to be a powerhouse.
And then who has Penn State beat? What's their best win?
Wisconsin.
Their best win, Wisconsin.
Bowling Green. Bowling Green's going to win the MAC. That might be their best win, and they won by 7. I'm not even joking.
Goodness. And Illinois was a great win at the time.
Yeah, that's a whole different debate on what your ranking was when they beat you versus what your ranking is at the end of the season. The SEC's made a living on that debate.
But this is the problem. The schedule differentials in the Big Ten were terrible this year. Terrible.
I mean, I do agree with you. Either go to 9 conference games for the SEC.
And I think they should all go to 10. That will make things a little bit more even.
I mean, but if I'm the Big Ten, I'm going to Penn State, and I know you don't control their schedule, but I'm saying, you know what? Call up Georgia. Call up LSU. LSU travels. Yeah. They're actually pretty good. Call up Notre Dame. Call up somebody, and you need to start putting a really good non-conference game on your schedule. I know they did a home and home with Auburn a few years back. Auburn has really not been consistently good for a while. And shame on Penn State. And quite honestly, I am a huge proponent of punishing weak schedules. I absolutely believe it because I look at Georgia at 7-2, and I say that's a really good 7-2 when you break down their schedule.
Absolutely.
Same with Alabama. Same with Ole Miss. Same with Texas. This is a gauntlet, and I applaud the SEC for putting really tough schedules out there, and the Big Ten should be ashamed of themselves. Like Penn State had a cupcake ride, and they should be punished for it. So I don't like it, and I think this is going to really backfire because we talked about this earlier. The way the playoffs and the seeding is setting up is you could very well see 2 SEC teams coming up north, one playing Penn State, one playing Indiana. It could even be Ohio State, right? If Ohio State doesn't get the bye, that means they lost to Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. Maybe they're an 8 seed. You could see 3 Big Ten teams being 5 through 8 and having 3 SEC teams coming up in the cold. If the Big Ten teams happen to go 3-0 in those games, you will not see the SEC schedule tough next year, and that's a shame because there's been great college football this year. How do you?
That's true. It has been awesome. You're absolutely right about that. That's the cool thing about their scheduling. They've had great games. Been fun to watch a lot of these games, and I wish the Big Ten had a little bit more. Ohio State looked like they were going to have a terrible schedule this year, but it turned out great because of these other teams kind of elevating and getting the benefit of the doubt with those schedules. So we got Indiana, we got Penn State, and then obviously you got the Michigan game every year. And Oregon, I almost forgot to say Oregon. Awesome. It was an awesome schedule for Ohio State, the back half of it at least.
But I can at least make an argument for Ohio State. Take out Indiana because nobody saw that coming. But even going in, you saying you're going to play 2 top 10 teams on the road. That's a tough schedule. That just is. And that's not even counting the Michigan game, which everyone knows is going to be tough every year. Now you're looking at this schedule and saying you're going to play 3 top 10 teams this year. Not a lot of college football programs any year can say they play 3 top 10 teams in the regular season. That's a tough schedule. So
sure.
I have no qualms about it, but you can also counter and say, look at Michigan. Last year we railed on Michigan because of how fluffy soft their schedule was. Didn't matter. They won. They won everything. So
sure.
I mean, that's why I didn't like Michigan. Really, obviously, I wanted Michigan to lose every game for obvious reasons, but I really wanted them to lose because you should not reward a weak schedule.
Oh, can't wait till after this week, man. I thought this was going to be a little short of a podcast. We're going to thank the college football dogs for putting this on for us and getting us in here. We are part of the College Football Dogs Media Network, so check them out. Go give them a look. Thank you, Buckeye backers. We are going to get out of here. Any last words, Vegas?
No. Enjoy.
All right, y'all. All right. Enjoy it. Hopefully get out of there with no injuries. God bless everyone. Have a wonderful day and have a wonderful weekend.